Good afternoon, change makers and social innovators all around the world. We welcome you yet to another great edition of the Social Impact webinar. We're super excited to have and host you to our very first edition for 2023. We would love to read from each of our delegates or attendees joining us this afternoon. So just use the comment section, share with us where you're joining us from any part of Africa or in the world, whether it's Nigeria or across the 36 states. We would love to read from you. Share your name, share your the name of your organization, what you do, as well as your expectations for today's webinar. So, today's webinar is very exciting. We're treating a very intriguing topic. It's in tune with the topical issues or issue of the day. And we know what is happening in Nigeria currently. We are at the precipice of another election year. And in that light, we are taking on a very insightful topic, which is Nigeria Decides 2023. And we have in the studio with us a very quintessential, a very well experienced speaker, an accomplished speaker as well. And our name is Mrs. Abosede George Ogan. And we're excited to have her in the studio with us. But just before I have her on board, I would love to really read from each of you. I know people are tuned in right now. So share with us in the comment section where you're joining us from. Would love to know where you're joining us from, the name of your organization, what you do, and your expectation, what your expectations are for this webinar. Mrs. Abosede will be doing justice to today's conversation. It promises to be highly interactive. If you also have questions, you can contact with them, and of course, get ready to type in your questions when we get to the Q&A session. All right, without further ado, I will have or carry out a warm introduction of our very quintessential speaker, and then she will join me right on the webinar. All right, so Abosede is a tri-sector leader with almost 20 years experience working across the nonprofit, private and public sectors as a development professional. She began her career with Action Aid International Nigeria and coordinated corporate social responsibility and sustainability for Keystone Bank, First Bank, and Samsung Electronics West Africa, respectively. Abosede was also the founding director, strategy, funding, and stakeholder management at the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, LSTF, as part of a team creating jobs in Africa's largest city by population, Lagos. In these roles, Abosede contributed to improving the health, education, and economic outcomes in over 30 states in Nigeria and 5 cities across West Africa. She chairs the Gender Subcommittee of the Cross-Cutting Technical Working Group of the Nigerian National Development Plan, 2021 to 2050 team. She has a degree in political science and public administration from Ibadan University, an MSc in communication for innovation and development from Reading University, and a master in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School, where she was recognized with the Josephine Vernon Award as the most outstanding Edward S. Mason Fellow, and the Women and Public Policy Program Barbara Jordan Award for Women's Leadership. Abosede is an Associate Fellow of the Nigerian Leadership Initiative and a Vital Voice Engage Fellow. She has published articles on women's leadership, cost of exclusion, multi-sectoral partnerships, and sustainable business. She's an expert in using multi-sectoral approach in program management and policy implementation. She is skilled in development communications, stakeholder management, fundraising, and sustainability, complemented by strong analytical, team building, and interpersonal skills. She was named Woman of the Year 2020 for her work in women's political participation by her network, and one of Nigeria's 100 most inspirational women by Leading Ladies Africa in 2019. Let's make welcome Abosede George Ogan. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Tony, for that warm introduction. And thank you for having me. It's really, really good to be here. Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Once again, to all of our attendees and community members joining us this afternoon, please use the comment section to share with us where you're joining us from, your name, the name of your organization, what you do, and your expectations for today's webinar. You can also get ready your questions as once we are ready for that session, we would go ahead to answer the questions. All right. Abosede, thank you once again for joining us. We're excited about today. So I know from your experience as a public policy analyst, when we think about the Nigerian politics, there are a lot of, issues when you just think about Nigerian politics. The question that comes to mind will be, is the Nigerian politics a politics of fairness? Particularly with the fact that we're currently at a defining phase as a nation. So, just from your understanding and your experience and expertise as an analyst, how would you really regard our politics as a nation? Thank you,
Thank you very
Oluwatosi.
much. Thank you very much for that question. So first of all, we are a democracy, and I think it's really important to sort of lay that foundation as what exactly it is that we're practicing, right? And if you look at democracies that are succeeding globally, they have a few features, right? They have a respect for the rule of law.
Very true.
There is a prioritization on strengthening and strong institutions, whether you're strengthening them or you're building them, right? And then there are other things around the human indicators, around the well-being of their people, the livelihoods, all the indicators around poverty and all of that. So, if you want to use those measures, definitely we are not operating an optimal democracy. And we then see the impact of that with a lot of the things that we see happening in our nation today around high levels of corruption, around a lack of regard and respect for the rule of law, and
Very
then
true.
of course very saddening is that people are always at the sort of receiving end of bad governance. So Nigerians are the ones who suffer the most, right? So that's kind of like looking at it holistically. Now, if you
Yes.
come to the fact that whether you like it or not, we have now run 4 cycles of a democratic election. So that way we
Yes.
are practicing a democracy.
Democracy.
I think what's important to note is here comes another opportunity. And I think we should not take that for granted because there are
Yes.
countries who, started off as a democracy and that was intercepted, for whatever reason. So the most important
Yes.
thing I think, Tony, is that look, it's 2023, we get another chance and we must maximize this opportunity like our lives depend on it because actually it does.
Yes, very true. Very profoundly captured, very profoundly established. I love how, again, you walked us through that journey, saying, though, this is what we're practicing, these are the issues, but here is another great chance for us to make things right.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So, how prepared do you think Nigerians are for the um, key elections coming up on the 25th of February and 11th of March? Just thinking about it, how prepared are they? Let me keep it at that question before I delve into my next question.
So
Yes.
if you talk about preparedness, right? That can be on multiple levels, I believe, right? But if we're
Very true.
talking specifically about Nigerians and us as a people, I think what we should reference then is, just the sheer number of new voters we have. I mean, that is something to be delighted about, that we sort of almost 10 million new voters came into the register and could literally be responsible
Mm,
for shifting the election, right? So I think that Nigerians have made a very bold statement about the fact that this is their constitutional right. They know that, they understand it, and so they have gone out to register to vote. Now, what we need to see is that we need to see that registration of voting translate into actual voting. People need to come out and vote. So that is something that I think we must emphasize. It's one thing to register, it's another thing to come out on the day and actually cast your ballot. So I think that
mm,
Nigerians have shown really good signaling in terms of registration. Now, we want to see
mm,
that translate, because what the data shows is that oftentimes, right now, we
mm,
have 93.5 million registered voters. Amazing, right?
mm,
But what
mm.
we have
Yes.
seen as a trend in the past is that only just about 40% of people actually vote on the day, which is not good enough,
Yeah.
because that means
Very true.
only less than 40% choose whoever becomes our leaders. So we need to up that
Mm,
number, should be getting to 80%, if not
yes.
more. And so it's one thing to register, but we want to see people come out to vote. So to that degree, Nigerians are ready. And I think there's another layer about just how phenomenal they've been engaged. We've seen a huge increase in engagement with political campaigns, with just, conversations, the social awareness. And I think that that is amazing for our democracy. But again, we need to move into action. And all of that comes at the ballots. If you've done all this great engagement, and you don't vote, unfortunately, you are not fully, exercising your consent. We'll just end with saying Nigerians have shown good signaling in terms of preparedness, but we want to see that happen and end at the ballot. So, yeah, you there?
Sorry. Brilliant. Thank you very
You
much.
muted.
Yes, I am there. Yes, can you hear me? I'm there. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Please confirm in the comment section that you can hear me clearly.
Oh, I think
Um,
network. Yes.
okay,
You're
great,
muted
great.
again. I'm not sure
Yes,
why
yes.
it's repeating. Yeah, I hear
Um,
you now.
okay, great. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. All right. So I said brilliant. Thank you. I just love again how you're giving that powerful chair to everyone. That beyond securing your PVCs, we need to really now really exercise that key action of voting. It's not just for glam. It's not just for filling among the category of those who have procured the PVCs, but more than that, the PVCs must speak for us. Thank you, Oluwatosin and Oluwasegun, for the feedback. All right. Please confirm that. Okay, great. Oluwatosin has confirmed to me. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Yes, very true, Oluwasegun. Yes, we have 10 million additional voters. Very true. Yes. All right. I'm waiting for some few seconds. Okay, perfect. You're in now. I can hear you, and I think the network is better. Yes, beautiful. There was just a slight glitch
Yes.
earlier on. Yes, yes,
No
exactly. So
worries.
I just love the recaps happening in the comment section about what you shared. That is one thing to register, it's another thing to come out and vote on election day. And that's why it's important that we exercise our voters' rights to really vote on both days. We must let our cards speak for us beyond the voices and the advocacy and everything happening. Our cards must do the speaking. All right. Okay. So this moves me to my next question. And, just thinking about what is happening, with the elections and even with the Jackpot syndrome happening currently, people, there is some sort of heightened sensitivity about this election year and all. And more importantly, when it even comes to everyone thinking about the future of Nigeria, the question that comes to mind is, do we still have hope about the future of Nigeria? Can our image be truly restored? And will this current election, be a key decider to that happening?
Thank you very much for that question. I facilitated a session yesterday discussing the key trends that will shape the 2023 elections. And I want to borrow some of the conversations that we had from that around the fact that it was Samson Itodo of Yaga Africa that said, there are three things on the ballot this year, and I couldn't agree more with him. There is identity on the ballot, because for the first time, we do have candidates who are sort of coming across both religious and ethnic lines. And we know that that continues to be a great challenge for our nation, even though we hope that the next leader unifies us because that's really important. But then the next thing that's on the ballot is
Yes.
justice. There's justice on the ballot as well. People are
Mm,
seeking justice. And if you borrow from what happened with NSARS and the fact that, look, people got a glimpse of the power of the
very true.
people and they were not going to let that opportunity go. I remember during NSAS, people wishing that, oh my gosh, it's 2020. We wish the election was that year or the next year so we could carry this momentum to it. But I'm so glad that people did not forget. So there's justice on the ballot. And the final thing on the ballot, Tony, is hope. There is hope on the ballot. People are looking and desperate for hope. Hope is what
Very
Nigerians
true.
are. Hope is who we are. But we want to be able to go beyond hope to actually get a leader that backs that hope with action. So it's a no-brainer. There is hope on the ballot. People are going to
Yes.
be voting for people that they believe will change the trajectory of both their lives and the nation. And if you're here and you haven't decided, that is what should drive your decision. Somebody who you
Yes.
believe, right, will give you the Nigeria you hope for and the life that you hope for as a Nigerian. Now, when it comes to Jagba, you and I might not have lived long enough, right? But if you
Yes.
hear the stories from the old people, they'll tell you that they've had different Japa moments, right? It's not
Yes. Very
new.
true.
It's nothing that is,
Very true.
novel, right? There have been seasons where people live. It's principles, 7 years of famine, 7 years of plenty. Some stay,
Very
some
true.
leave, some go, some come
Yes.
back.
Yes.
I think that that's a very interesting perspective to look at it from. I think the question we all need to ask ourselves, depending on what your life's guidance is, if you're spiritual like me, whether the Lord is leading you in that direction or whatever, is am I supposed to stay or am I a leaver, am I a stayer? I guess
Yes.
um, but whether you are a leaver or stayer, there are benefits both ways, right? People have to
Exactly.
stay and build nation.
They
And
can.
people who go, to be honest, Nigeria derives a lot of revenue from from remittances. So we're not mad, right? And the truth is,
Yes.
when you come back with expertise, with
Expertise.
intellectual prowess, and come and add value to this country. So I think
Mm.
we should start looking at nation building as something that everyone can play a role in, and we just need to
In.
ask ourselves, what role am I supposed to play?
Am I supposed to play? Okay. All right, beautiful. Thank you so much, Abosede. For a few seconds, there was a glitch, but we got that point. Yes, thank you. All right, I just love what Abosede highlighted, the three things she highlighted around the fact that there are three key things that are at stake here: our identity, justice, and hope. If there's anything you're taking out, don't lose those three things. If there's anything you're going to take away from today's webinar, let this stick with you. That these are three key things you're fighting for through your vote at the elections. Thank you so much, Abosede, for those very brilliant thoughts. Now, speaking about the roles, I just love how you're delving into my next question. And you was talking about the fact that nation building is not the responsibility of a select few. It's not the responsibility of whom those we appoint into power or into government. Beyond that, nation building is a collective responsibility, and that's what you have established. So this takes me to my next question. What therefore will you say, or what are the roles of the youth and the women in the forthcoming elections? Because particularly people look at particular women, not they look at them as a segment that
Perfect.
has not been fully represented in in politics within Nigeria, and likes. Even the youth, also matter. So what role can the youth and women play in the forthcoming elections?
Thank you for that question, Tony. So, according to the INEC, young people aged 18 to 34 account for 37 million of the total registered voters. Okay, so remember I said we had a total of 93.5. Young people aged 18 to 34 account for
Yes.
37 million of those. And then we have another uh, almost 35% who are age 35 to 49. So, some people are calling this the young people's election, right? Because that means that, almost, what are we talking about? So almost 70% of the voters, right, are less than, are 49 and below. And so some people are calling this the young people's election if people come out to vote. Now, of that total number of 93.5% or 93.5 million, women make up 40, I believe it's 47 or 49%, right? So whether you like it or not, regardless of how you sort of split those numbers, this is really an election that will be decided by young people and by women, right? And I think that it's important for women to begin to understand the power that they hold. Because
Very true.
in the last election, women represented 47% of the voters, right? And in this election as well, they're going to be representing about the same number. I think it is important for women to understand that they have the responsibility to ensure that they are voting the right leaders. Now, unfortunately, the data around voters does not translate to the women on the ballots. If you look at averagely,
Very true.
we have about 10% women across all political offices on the ballot. That's disheartening, but I think it's important that those of us who are going to vote take time to see who are the women on the ballot. State assembly elections, House of Representatives, Senate. Unfortunately, we only have one woman running for governor in Adamawa State, Binani. If you are so inclined, vote her, because we need more women in political leadership. And, without delving too much into it, look, the evidence points towards that when women are in levels or in political leadership, we all benefit. And if we want this
Yes.
country to change, if we want insecurity to be solved, if we want the economy to be better, if we want better healthcare, better access to education and quality of education, the evidence shows us that when you have more women in positions of power, these things do change. The challenge we've had in Nigeria is that we just don't have enough women in positions of leadership. That's the truth.
Yes.
4.1%, it's not going to move the needle,
It's a
right?
far
So
cry.
I think that really this is an election for young people and for women. And we must exercise that power that we have in our numbers.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. And I know that even just to crack a very soft joke. Most of the people tuning in are women also. And just to know, to let you know that, just as you rightly said, women are really passionate about leading. And we should really learn to give them much more chances, believe in them, and just borrow trust. Because a lot of times there is just always this dynamics. But let's borrow that trust that they are capable. Thank you so much, Shegun, for that feedback. So, riding on this, someone asked the question in the comment section. While we were talking about what the roles are, the person said, and the person stated rightly that, do they even know what the roles are? We're asking what are the roles. He said when they know the roles. And I know you have emphasized that. So let's now talk generically, generally, not just focusing on the women. In general, in general, what are our roles? Beyond even casting your votes at the electoral polling units, what more can we do to ensure that whatever voting rights you exercise, you stand truly births the results that is desired?
I think that's a brilliant question. We always say there's a value chain for politics, as there's a value chain for
Absolutely.
everything
Okay.
else. A lot of people don't understand, but there is a value chain, right? Not everybody will become the candidate because really there are only, I mean, how many offices to run for in Nigeria, right? It's only a limited number, right? Maybe 1,000 and something offices. So not everybody will be the candidate, okay? But you could be the strategist, you could be expert on finance, communication, you could be the volunteer that does their social media, then you could be the financier, right? We need to start to put our our money where our mouth is. We just need to start to do that. If you think about what was phenomenal about Barack Obama's campaign, it was the fact that while the other opponents were raising billions of dollars via big donors, he literally raised billions of dollars by people giving $10, $5, all of that. It is possible. Nigeria has numbers, right? So we need to start to put our money where our mouth is. If you believe in a candidate, support the candidate financially, right? Put your money behind the candidate. Then I think we can do other things around. But one of the things that's really critical that we often don't talk about is the political parties.
Yes.
I work
Exactly.
in a non-partisan organization. Maybe a lot of people, social impact, change makers. But the truth is, if you are so inclined, join a political party. Because at the end of the day, the people that we are voting for on the said day, February 25th and March 11th, have already been selected at the party level. And that's really where change can happen if you want to change the selection of the candidates who end up on the ballot, right? Because if it's
Exactly.
direct or indirect primaries, if it's indirect primaries, the delegate system, if you're a delegate, you have more power to ensure that the right candidate comes up. And those are the people that the citizens then select from. So I think that the political party can be a strategic way to get involved. Obviously, find the one that's right for you, that's aligned with your ideologies and your values and things like that. But there's a whole value chain of how people can get involved, understanding that there's also pre-election, during election, and also post-election. Because when they get there, they also need resources and support to succeed.
Yes. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I love it. And just riding on your response about the political parties, the question that comes to my political parties and the different candidate representations across different key seats, what comes to mind is it appears that most people are principally concerned about the presidential candidates. We are not really paying much attention to other roles or positions at state, senatorial, and local levels. So I would really want you to just speak to this in a way to encourage people. Yes, the presidential candidates are very critical, but beyond that level, there are other critical positions that we must, have our eyes on. So I would want
Yeah.
you to speak on that.
So, one of the things that is evident is that Nigerians need to become more politically educated. And this is all of us, right? Our level of understanding, awareness, education is, just varies. But why that's important is because oftentimes when you hear conversations, we are blaming the legislature for something that is only the prerogative of the executive and vice versa, right? So we don't understand many times. You say, oh, my road is bad, or oh, the school is not good. But that's not something that the president has nothing to do with those things, for example. Nothing.
Yes.
There's nothing he can do. That is your local government chairman, right? Or chairperson, and that is your, at the end of the day, the state, is responsible for education. So that level of, I think that's where it starts, to be honest, understanding who does what, like some basic understanding of who does what. Now, your legislators are supposed to make laws, and they are supposed to hold the executive accountable. So when you go to your
Accountable.
legislator and you're saying, come and do this for me in your constituency, come and do this for me in my community, that is not why your legislator is in power. Your legislator, though, could pass a bill that changes the trajectory of your entire community, right? So work with that legislator to collect the intelligence that they need to build the case for the bill, to pass it through the assembly, and then you get the benefits on the other side. So for me, I really think that we mostly focus on the president. Now, having said that, Nigeria runs a presidential system of government, and
Yes.
unfortunately, there is a lot of power at the center. So that's one of the things that we believe that more decentralization is needed, to ensure that there's devolution of
Yes.
powers, so that the states have
Right.
powers, the local government has powers. But having said that, it is not just because there is a lot of power that we should all focus on the president. The president also will have a cabinet. There will be an education minister, a health minister. These are all appointed
Exactly.
positions, yes. But like I said, once you
Yes.
understand what the legislature does, what the executive arm of government does, what the judiciary does, the next thing is to understand that the president works with a team, right? So you need to understand that everybody matters if this nation is going to work. The president does not work in isolation. So it's important that you know who your governor is going to be. There is so much that a state does that is closer to you as an individual than whatever happens at the federal government, right? And I think similarly, even your state assemblies could transform your immediate community just by passing the right laws,
Yes.
or by ensuring that the executive is being judicious with the way that they spend the money that the state has. So I think that that level of awareness is necessary for us to then prioritize and give the kind of concern we should to all the other political office holders that we have.
Exactly. Beautiful. Thank you for that clarification. And I know everyone tuned in or who will be tuning in, watching the replay, would definitely has that responsibility to get to know all of the candidates beyond the presidential candidates. Now, the next question that comes to mind is with regard to overvoting. We saw something critical that happened in Osun State with how the tribunal reached a decision that the incumbent currently the current incumbent was no longer liable due to overvoting or overvoting of ballots in some select local governments within that particular state, and in turn that led to the overturning of results in favor of the opponent. Now, as a result of that critical happening, people are beginning to wonder that towards the forthcoming elections, is this shouldn't this be a for us, whereby people could begin to weaponize overvoting Or if not in weaponizing it, it can also become some sort of discouragement. So we want to say to this, how can we prevent yes, how can we prevent overvoting at the forthcoming elections?
Right. No, I think that's a good question. I think the first place to start is that INEC has introduced the bimodal voter.
Abosede, did you get the question?
Yes, I heard the
I can see
question.
that there's a glitch.
I heard it. I heard your question. I'm responding.
Okay, beautiful.
Awesome. So I think the first
Oh,
place to
great,
start
great,
is
great.
that
Yes.
INEC has introduced the bimodal voters accreditation system, BVAS. So I think it's important for us to know this. Now, the way that that would then work, now that BVAS is, is the way we will vote. Once you get to your polling units, this is really important. Nobody's supposed to give you any paper. Don't you're not If you have not been verified, your vote will not be counted. Now, how does verification happen? Verification happens in two ways: facial recognition or a thumbprint. Now, if we're being honest, if you are accredited via those two means or either of those two means, it means that nobody else can come to that polling unit and take your identity. So the first critical step is that verification process. You must ensure that through the BVAS, you are verified. However, now you see the BVAS, the BVAS is going to be counting. So if Toyin comes, right, Toyin is one, and then you do your verification. Abosede comes, you do your verification. Now you need to ensure that that thing is reading zero. This is what we have been educated about. If it is not reading zero, right, if it's reading 100, when Toyin comes, it will be like 101. If you're the first, and it will be 101. Then when I come, it will be 102. It won't be two.
Two.
So what I'm trying to say is that yes, INEC has put in place a system that should curb overvoting, just rigging and all that. I definitely think this is the best we've had it in terms of technological preparedness. Now we hope that it will hold up on the day. But it's important for us to be aware of this, right? So that that is the way that you put your eye. And let's just say this: we're praying for peaceful elections. The security
Yes.
agencies are committed, to providing security at the polling unit. A lot of vigilance is required from us as eligible voters. You need to
Yes.
pay attention to what is happening to avoid these type of things. So I guess what I'm trying to say, Tony, is in the past, when a lot of these things were manual, right, it
Exactly.
was easier to rig. Now there is
Yes.
a manual part of this process. The manual
Mm.
part of this process is that the results are going to be electronically transmitted. However, it will not be an automatic process, right? The presiding officer still needs to write out, so look at the electronic screen or whatever and say, this party 20, this party 10. There also needs to be vigilance for that, because if the presiding officer writes 20, 200 instead of 20, and all of that. That's where the overvoting will come, because if we're 200 total in this polling unit, and then you write one person got 180, the others shared 100 amongst themselves, that's already 280, but we're only supposed to be 200. Now, it could be an innocent human error, but the most important thing is that from a verification perspective, there is now something that curbs that. Nobody will come twice and nobody can claim that they are towing when they are not, right? So that's a first step. The second step is this one about how the results are then, transmitted electronically. Because if the officer then goes and writes, this score of 180, 20, 10, 5, That's what goes, right? And that becomes the results that INEC will publish. I hope you can still hear me. I can see that Toyin's screen is loading. But that is what INEC then publishes, and that is
Brilliant.
what is going to impact on the results of the election. So vote buying over voting to some degree can be curbed given the infrastructure that has been put in place. But vigilance on the part of the electorate is very important.
Brilliant, brilliant. I'm so sorry about today. I want to take you back a little. We lost you from the point when you were talking about the first and the second step of how we could be vigilant as eligible voters. But please walk us through that again. Yes.
Okay, so the first step, like I said, is coming to the polling unit and being accredited. And you can only be accredited via the BVAS. Now, the BVAS would accredit you either through facial recognition or through thumb printing. And like I said, Tony and Abosede, they don't have the same. They can never have the same. So that just ensures that, look, if this polling unit had 200 people, we are able to verify that these are the 200 people. So you can't just bring, I mean, they say goats, cow, whatever, and say that they are voting or that they voted, right? So that's the first step. The second step is as you know, we will now be transmitting results electronically. Before, we used to carry physical ballots that will be hijacked or whatever. So that has now been taken away. But I'm saying that there is a manual process before transmission where the presiding officer literally needs to look at the results and write it out, and then it's typed in or typed in, maybe it's typed in. Now, that typing in, like I said, if you write 200 instead of 20, then it's a totally different result that will be published by INEC because of that human error. So the vigilance is at that point of, okay, this is what the result is saying. This party 200, this party 10, this party that. And to make sure that what from 10 it doesn't become 100. So that's the second point where vigilance is important to
Brilliant.
ensure that INEC is publishing the right and
Right.
correct result.
Results. Thank you so much. Brilliantly captured. And this takes me to my next question. So now, there are different leadership positions we'll be voting for. The question that comes to mind now is, who is a good leader? How do people elect the right and skillful or competent leader into power at different strata of leadership? So I just wanted to share with us. I don't want to assume people know, because we live in a time and a climate where values are thrown out the window. So I think it's important we reenact these things. So when we speak about good leadership, what does that even mean? When we're saying we want to elect into different leadership positions a good leader, what are the attributes to look out for in making these key decisions?
So thank you for that question. I would, I mean, I could go the route of being, what's the word now? Like just being, you say, oh, a good leader is somebody who is honest, who is kind, who is that. No, but I would say something that I've been saying publicly. Nigeria is at a very critical moment in its history, and we must get this one right. And so, what I have been saying is that Nigerians need a leader who can solve complex problems, actually complex adaptive challenges, right? Because Nigeria is not simple. Nigeria is not that. That's what I'm saying. So this honesty, integrity, values that a lot of us would like in a leader is great, and it's still what a leader should have. But I'm saying even more critical is a leader who knows how to solve problems, because Nigeria has a lot of those problems. So I think we need a leader who can solve problems. And then I guess it takes a lot of these other attributes to be able to solve problems. So you
So,
must be somebody who can rally people together, because you solve problems through deploying resources, whether this is human resources, financial resources, whatever capital that you're going to deploy. You need to be somebody who understands how to mobilize capital and deploy capital. Now, whether that is something that you need to be a trustworthy person for, right? Because people will not give you capital if they cannot trust you with the capital, right? So things like that then come into play. But I'm saying, instead of just being, we need integrity, honesty, trustworthy. No, for what? For what reason? Right? So, for example, we need somebody who's a unifier. Our next leader must be a unifier because this country must be unified. Right
Yes.
now, what is that attribute? I don't know. Right? Is it somebody who's a peacemaker, for example? We need somebody who will unify our nation, right? And that's it. So for me, the attributes of a good leader, as we know, are some of the attributes we already know. They have to be
Yes.
trustworthy, people of honesty, people of integrity, right? People who are resilient. But I'm saying that we need to understand why. And the why is that Nigeria needs or has a lot of adaptive challenges. Nigeria is a complex place, is not simple. And so we need a leader who can solve complex adaptive challenges.
I love it. I love it. I love it. You couldn't have captured it any better. Thank you for that brilliant thought. We have a question here from one of our committee members tuned in at the moment, and it's a very, very great question. So she's asking a question that how do we curb human error? It was when you were talking about the monitoring and being vigilant as eligible voters, and she about the talking about the second step of the capturing of results and all of that. And she asked the question around how do we curb the human error that can occur in the transmission of results.
I think it's just vigilance, right? Because and I don't know if some tips, in case people don't hear it anywhere else. When you're going to the polling units, it's better to go in groups if you can, right? Go with your neighbors, go with your family members. Hopefully, you're all voting in the same area. And why I say that is because, a lot of people want to vote and leave, right? Which, if you
Yes.
have any disability or any challenges, you're a pregnant woman, you're with a small child, please do that. And I know that INEC has made provisions for those people to be prioritized at the poll.
Prioritized.
But if you don't have any of those, then vigilance is required. Just, because if they see that the citizens are there to protect the votes, right? So it's not just get out the vote, but protect the vote. It becomes more difficult to just do any hanky panky, right? And then, where if it is an honest human error, somebody can then call because there's I think it's you're supposed to say 300 meters away from where they're collating and all that. So if you're able to observe, you can call it to the attention, and that can be rectified. So there just needs to be a vigilance, right? And a commitment from citizens to protect the votes. I think is important.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that emphasis rather on vigilance and the emphasis on vote protection. It is pertinent that we protect our votes beyond casting our votes and voting in the right leader. Thank you so much. And so this takes me to another critical issue around the selling of votes, especially to persons in maybe underserved communities, people who are vulnerable to selling their votes. How do we continue to educate these persons on the importance of not selling their votes? And how can the media also play a critical role in this?
Look, I think that one of the things that has happened to Nigeria and Nigerians is, regardless of who you are, Nigeria has happened to all of us in the last couple of years.
Exactly.
There's no one who's not feeling the pain. If you think about the recent fuel crisis, if you think about this lack and scarcity of cash, no, regardless of who you are, the thing thing is affecting all of us. So, the conversation about vote buying is still down to voter education, right? It's still down to awareness creation. And then we must acknowledge, right? I think it's really important that we acknowledge just the sheer poverty that exists, right? And we've all heard it, they don't care what you know if they don't know how much you care type thing, which is where the stomach infrastructure really comes
Yes.
from. It's that people show care first and then they will not tell you, okay, vote for me because I've bought you rice. If you are hungry, but you vote for me, I bought you rice. So we must acknowledge that there's poverty in the land. Acknowledge it, right? And then we can move on to, however, your future is worth more than a grain of salt. It's worth more than a
Yeah.
bag of rice. It's worth more
Very true.
than 5,000 naira. But again, back to what we were saying, I think one of the things that's more difficult is nobody is going to be over your head saying vote this party or that party, right? However, and if you heard the president's speech, even though there's still concerns about that, but there was something he noted, which is that it was intentional, this policy around redesigning the naira, to curb the amount of cash in the system that would be available for vote buying, right? So again, whether they looked at it holistically in terms of the other consequences, but there is an element of truth in that, look, if there's not as much cash in the system, then there is just not as much cash to give people
Gosh.
to then go and vote. However, I can promise you something. I can promise you that, don't worry, vote me, I will do X. And really, if there is poverty in the land, I will believe your promise. So, promissory notes is going to be an alternative to physical cash. But having said that, I think what's important for a lot of the people who we know, because it's not you and I who collect cash for votes, right? I
Exactly.
think you and I have the responsibility to educate those people around us, whether they are domestic staff, whether they're, people in our workplace, our security, guards or whatever, to say, look, don't take this money. You are mortgaging your future when you take this money. So I think that painting to people the cost of 5,000 naira in the now, versus what it does to you for the next 4 years, it's just too expensive. And that's why I started with the fact that, look, we've all been affected. And if you can tell people that, look, you see how that you suffered for 4 years, it was that your 5,000 naira that cost it. I think that, people will begin to uh, be better oriented about the cost of that.
Okay. Beautiful. Abosede, can you hear me?
I hear you now. Yes.
Can you hear me? All right, great. Yes. Beautiful. I think the part where you were talking about educating our security guards and the likes, and you were just trying to, cite an example yes. So maybe you can take that part again.
Yes, so no, I'm just saying that it's our responsibility to educate people who are not,
Yes.
literate, whether it's politically literate or academically literate, on the cost,
Yes.
right, of 5,000 naira and mortgaging their future for 4 years. And I think we have a physical example just based on how the share suffering, collective suffering that we have experienced in the last couple of years.
Yes, brilliant. Just before we round up today's webinar, I want to take one more question from the audience, and it's a very brilliant question, and it's directed at the citizenry. It says, "How do we encourage and help other voters overcome the valid fear that comes with waiting, that is being vigilant to see the process through?"
Oh, that's a brilliant question. Absolutely. This piece
Yes.
around security continues to be a major concern, and the reason why citizens often, like I said, just vote and go, right? But look, there has been all the security agencies are working together. That's one. There is also, and actually, I don't remember the name now, but I think it'll be worth for your team looking for it and sharing it with everyone. The
Okay.
Nigerian Civil Defense Corps and other security
Okay.
agencies have an app
Okay.
that you can download that actually tracks, insecurity, violence. So it's almost like a one button
Violence. Okay.
that you can call for help. And I think this is really important for us to know, for us to have. There's going to be a live
Yes.
situation room, as we know, in different parts. There's going to be, different organizations are bringing out. I know YIGA Africa has the election body, which is
Yes.
like a WhatsApp
Yes.
thing where you can always, say something is happening here and they will help you get help. So I think
Exactly.
information will be critical in this period as a citizen. It's almost like how, when
Yes.
people are going to concerts, they prepare very hard. Like they say, oh, I need to have this sling bag so that I can be in front of me. I need to have my pepper spray. You need your toolkit for election. I think that if citizens put in as much effort into going there and being determined to defend their votes, there's so much resources that are available to at least reduce the risk of violence and insecurity.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Abosede. It's really has been a very enlightening and enriching time with you.
Thank
We don't
you.
take this for granted in any way. This past 50 to 1 hour, we have really learned a lot. And of course, we will do our part by getting the information and circulating that information to ensure people are emboldened to
Yeah.
step out to exercise their voting rights.
Thank you so much for having me
Just
here.
before we,
Yeah.
okay, you were saying something?
No, I
Absolutely.
was
You
just saying
did.
thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But just before we just call it a day, I would want you to give your final thoughts. In 60 seconds, just share a chat to everyone out there. Nigerians
Right.
currently, can you hear me? Okay, Nigerians
Yes, yes.
currently, yeah, in 60 seconds, I want you to give you a charge and just encourage everyone out there, encourage the citizenry. I know everyone is looking at this current election period and this current elections as a key decider to just getting that messiah that will restore the hope of Nigerians once again. So I just wanted to send a charge out there, just share an advice, stir people up, stir the citizenry up with just a 60 seconds charge.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So, what I would say to people is that your vote counts. I think that one, believe it, believe it, believe it. Your vote counts. However, it will
Yes.
not count if you do not go and vote. Right? Voting doesn't happen online, it doesn't happen electronically, not yet. You have to go to
Yes.
the polls and vote. So my charge to everyone who, is still on the fence, look at the candidates, look at their manifestos, vote for your future. Vote for the future of generations of Nigerians to come. Vote for the leaders that you believe will actually change the trajectory of this nation, and by that, change the trajectory of your life. Don't waste your vote. Don't take your vote lightly at all. And remember that you're not only voting for the president, you're voting for governors, you're voting for House of Representatives, you're voting for senators, you're voting
Yes.
for House of Assembly members. So make sure that across board, you're voting leaders who can solve complex adaptive challenges. But once you have casted that vote, you're able to protect your vote. Be sure that your vote will count. And then commit to being the person who supports a party or a candidate that commits to peace, because a major challenge will be accepting the vote. One of the things that a lot of analysts will tell you is that whoever wins this election is the winner of this election, because there's a lot, right? that's riding on it, around the infrastructure that has been put in place, around the international observers that will come, around civil society's preparedness to hold INEC and the government accountable to credible, free, and fair elections. So just be sure that your vote will count, commit to peace, and we pray and wish Nigeria free, fair, and credible elections in 2023.
Amen. Thank you so much, Abosede. We've really had a very brilliant discourse.
Thank you.
I could just reel out some of the comments coming in from all of
Thank
the
you all so much.
participants,
Thank you for
tuned
having
in.
me.
That will
Thank you.
join us. Thank you
Bye.
so much. And to everyone, we say yes, thank you. And to everyone, we say please go out there, exercise your voting responsibilities, and we are all rooting for you. Thank you to everyone who is streamed from within Nigeria, across Africa, and across the world. Until next month, we look forward to joining us at the Social Impact Webinar March edition. Also, visit our social media platforms and just queue in and plug in to all of the programs and initiatives that we have loading up for you in this season. God bless you all. And we say, yes, we're all rooting for everyone. And we say to every visionary chain maker, we're rooting for you. Keep making those sustainable impact. And one thing you must understand is that your impact work counts. It counts. It counts. It counts. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today, and we're looking forward to having you with us at the next edition of the webinar. God bless you, and bye.